I walked into my sister's wedding, alone, and her in-laws laughed in my face, whispering I was a failure at 32, unmarried, no date, just a career-obsessed loner. Then the groom's uncle, a billionaire who runs half the corporate world, stood up and bowed to me in front of everyone, shutting them all up. I'm Emily Carter, 32, and that day, I walked into my sister Natalie's wedding without a +1. No date, no excuses. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I came in a simple black dress, head held high. But to them, her in-laws, her new family, I was just the awkward sister, the one who stayed single, the one who built tech startups no one at that wedding could understand, let alone respect. I heard the whispers. She's still alone? Too busy for a man, I guess? My chair was at the far end of the table, like they'd already decided where I belonged. But I didn't flinch. I've stood in bigger rooms. I've faced tougher crowds. What they didn't know was that someone in that ballroom knew exactly who I was, and he was about to show them. Growing up, I was always the odd one out in the Carter family, and not in a quirky, lovable way. I was the background noise to my sister Natalie's spotlight. She had that perfect look, sunlight blonde hair, those bright blue eyes, and a laugh that made people lean in closer. At family barbecues, she'd do a cartwheel or flash her pageant smile, and relatives would clap like they were at a Broadway show. Meanwhile, I'd be in the corner with my nose in a book or asking Uncle Dave how the grill's thermostat worked. I wasn't trying to compete. I was just wired differently. But every time I spoke up, someone would gently remind me, let Natalie have her moment, as if I could steal a stage I never stood on. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't loud. I was just curious in ways my family didn't understand. I remember once, when I was 10, I took apart our microwave just to see how it worked. I put it back together by bedtime and it worked fine. I thought I'd get a pat on the back. Instead, my dad asked, "Why can't you just play with dolls like normal girls?" I didn't answer. I never liked dolls. At 14, I built a self-timing oven using spare parts from a junk shop and a tutorial I found online. No one asked me how I did it, they just told me not to mess with the toaster. Natalie, meanwhile, got a standing ovation for making brownies from a box. And she deserved it, I guess. She was sweet, friendly, never said a harsh word to anyone, but she didn't need to. The world did the celebrating for her. High school was the real divide. Natalie was homecoming queen, dated the quarterback, got her name painted on a banner at the football field. I skipped prom to go to a statewide robotics camp. I was the only girl there, and I loved every minute of it. My mom didn't. "You'll grow out of this tech phase," she told me, right before grounding me for skipping what she called a once-in-a-lifetime high school memory. But to me, that camp was the memory. While Natalie learned to walk in heels, I was learning to write code that could automate temperature control. I didn't fit into the life my parents imagined, and over time, I stopped trying to. By the time we hit our 20s, Natalie had already gotten married once. Big white dress, glittery invitations, vows under a gazebo. My parents were glowing. They said things like, "She's finally found her person." I sat quietly through it all, smiled in pictures, and didn't say a word when the marriage crashed within 2 years. The second one was smaller. No gazebo, but plenty of champagne. That didn't last either. But when Ethan came along, the third husband, everything changed. He wasn't just another guy. Ethan had a name. Old money. His family owned businesses in 5 states and real estate in 2 countries. They had connections, lawyers, politicians. His uncle sat on the board of 3 multinational companies. His aunt hosted charity galas. My parents acted like Natalie had landed the moon. Suddenly, my mom started dressing like someone else. My dad got interested in wine pairings. They dropped phrases like networking and estate planning as if they'd known those words all their lives. To the neighbors, they bragged like Natalie's wedding was their second chance. "She's marrying into legacy," my mom told her book club. Real class. As if that meant she had finally done it right. And as for me, I was still the weird one. I'd founded 2 startups by then, raised venture capital, had my own office, and a small but growing team. But my parents couldn't explain any of it to their friends. "Emily's doing tech stuff," they'd shrugged, like it was a phase I still hadn't grown out of. When the wedding invite came, it was formal. No phone call, no special message. Just my name printed in gold foil, with a polite request to RSVP. I clicked solo without a second thought. I knew what to expect. I didn't need backup. My mom texted the day before the flight, "Please don't make this about you, Emily." That one stung. I never had. I never wore white to her events, never made speeches, never tried to pull attention from Natalie. I stayed in my lane always. I just happened to exist in a way they didn't know how to celebrate. So I packed a black dress, simple, clean, the kind of thing that doesn't beg for attention but earns respect. No flashy jewelry, just a slim chain with a tiny microchip I had designed, a silent nod to everything I'd built on my own. I flew in, checked into a hotel, and got ready without any fanfare. I wasn't there to make a statement. I was there to show myself that I could walk into that room and stand tall, even if no one else saw me that way. But when I arrived at the venue, the feeling in the air was thick. The kind that tells you you're being watched even before you step through the doors. I walked in, alone, and immediately felt eyes on me. Not admiration, not surprise. Just that low, sharp judgment that cuts without words. I heard a woman whisper, "Is that her sister?" Followed by a soft laugh. Another one said, "Still single. Must be nice to only care about work." My chair was at the farthest end of the family table, almost behind a floral arrangement, like they wanted me there, but not really there. I looked around. The room was dripping in gold and ivory. Chandeliers reflected off crystal glasses. People mingled like they were born to network. And me? I sat quietly, back straight, hands in my lap. Let them talk. Let them assume. I'd survived tougher rooms, but what none of them knew, what they couldn't have known, was that someone in that room knew exactly who I was. Not the version my parents described, not the weird sister, not the girl who skipped prom, but the real me, and that person was about to make sure everyone else saw me too. The wedding was less of a celebration and more of a production designed for perfect photos and flawless reels. The kind of event where nothing felt real, but everything looked incredible on screen. Drone cameras hummed overhead like mechanical bees, catching every angle of the floral arch that probably cost more than my rent for the year. A string quartet played some classical mashup I couldn't place. The flower girl, who looked like she'd been cast in a children's fashion ad, glided down the aisle, tossing petals with rehearsed grace. Natalie and Ethan said their vows like it was a script they'd memorized. Her smile was all teeth, his eyes full of camera-ready emotion. I sat in the back, clapping when expected, quiet and invisible. I didn't belong in their world, and that was the point. They wanted me to see it. The reception was held in a ballroom that sparkled like a dream. Crystal chandeliers, customized cocktails with names like the Ethan Elixir and Blushing Natalie, and napkins embroidered with their initials in gold thread. Even the ice cubes had herbs frozen inside them. I made my way to my seat, which true to form was at a table near the kitchen doors, far from the main dance floor, right next to two cousins I barely remembered. One of them leaned in with a smirk, stirring her martini, and said, "No +1? Really? I thought you'd have someone by now with all your success." Her voice dripped with pity, like being single was a tragedy she just couldn't imagine surviving. I smiled, tight-lipped, and said nothing. But it stung. Not because I needed a man to feel worthy, but because it was so clear they thought I did. Natalie's new in-laws floated around her like she was royalty. They praised her dress, her nails, her life choices, every word a polished compliment wrapped in entitlement. Meanwhile, I got side-eyes like I was the weird cousin who showed up uninvited. I caught one aunt glance at me, leaned toward her husband, and whispered just loud enough, "That's the single one, right?" The way she said it, like she was pointing out a stain on a nice dress, made my stomach turn. Then there was Margaret, Ethan's mom. She didn't bother saying hello, but I overheard her tell another guest, "She's the sister who's always working." Poor thing, they chuckled like they were sharing a secret joke. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Enough to make my chest tighten. I got up, walked to the bar, and ordered a ginger ale just to give myself something to hold, something to focus on besides the slow unraveling in my chest. Then Natalie approached, dressed like a magazine bride, smile painted on perfectly, holding a champagne flute like it was part of her arm. "Just checking in," she said lightly. "You okay?" I looked her in the eyes and said, "Natalie, we haven't talked, like really talked, in 5 years. She laughed like I had told a joke. "Well, you're here now, that's something." Before I could reply, she spun off, soaking in the attention waiting for her across the room. I stood there, frozen, holding my ginger ale like it could steady me. I returned to my table and sat like a ghost among people who saw through me. That's when I heard it. 2 voices behind me, Ethan's cousin and his uncle. "Pretty," one of them said, but cold. The other laughed. One of those career women who thinks we should clap just because she showed up alone. I didn't turn around. I didn't breathe. My fingers dug into the napkin in my lap. For a second I thought about leaving, just walking out, catching an early flight and pretending none of this happened, but something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe the years of being underestimated. Whatever it was, I stayed. And that's when the air shifted. A chair scraped the floor, slow, sharp, deliberate. I looked up. William Bennett, Ethan's uncle, stood up. He wasn't like the rest of them. No fake tan, no flashy watch, just a simple, perfectly tailored navy suit and silver hair that didn't need styling. His eyes found mine across the room. Then he walked forward, calm and purposeful. Past the head table, past Natalie, who looked confused, past Ethan, past Margaret, who turned pale like she'd seen something impossible, And then right there, in front of everyone, he bowed. A deep, formal bow, the kind you see in old movies. A gesture of respect, not just acknowledgement. A hush fell over the room. I heard a fork hit the floor. And suddenly, no one was whispering. He straightened up and walked over to me. "Miss Carter," he said, voice steady, "it's an honor to meet you. Your Zurich Summit talk changed the way my company approaches data security. We reference your model in every meeting. I owe you." My hands were still gripping my glass. I blinked, unsure if I was dreaming. Everyone in the room was watching. Every face turned. The people who whispered, who judged, now looked unsure. Recalculating, rethinking, I stood, slowly, and said, "Thank you, Mr. Bennett. The feeling's mutual." I smiled, not to prove anything, not to rub it in, but because it felt good to be seen. Really seen. For the first time all night, no one was laughing. They were listening. William didn't return to his seat. Instead, he turned to me and asked if I would walk with him. I said yes, not out of awe or flattery, but because deep down, I wanted to own this moment. To walk through it with my head up, not shrink from it like I used to. We stepped out onto the stone terrace, lit by soft lanterns and wrapped in the cool hush of the evening air. Everything out there felt still, like the world paused to let me catch my breath. William moved slowly, like a man who had nothing to prove and all the time in the world. "I meant what I said in there," he began, his tone calm, measured. "I knew who you were the second you walked in." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny," I said. "Your family sure didn't." He laughed, really laughed, and shook his head. "They wouldn't. They're too wrapped up in appearances, Natalie's people included." I didn't argue. He was right, we both knew it. He continued, his voice dipping lower. 3 years ago, your AI-driven data recovery model saved my company from a $180 million zero-cents disaster. We were about to buy out a competitor that had garbage under the hood. Your Zurich talk made us pull back. It changed everything. I blinked. "That wasn't public information? How'd you even know that was me?" I asked. He smiled, just slightly. "It's my job to know who's shaping the future, Emily. I don't care about who's loudest. I care about who's real. Ethan doesn't even know how to check his own email without help. He inherited power, but you built it from nothing." His words hit like a flood. While Natalie was perfecting her lighting for selfies, I was hunched over a desk at 3 a.m. debugging code, chasing deadlines, pitching investors, eating cold noodles and sleeping under my desk when the couch was taken. I'd built 2 companies. I'd failed twice, gotten back up both times. I wasn't just surviving the tech world, I was changing how it moved. But no one in my family saw it. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't cute. It didn't match their idea of success. We went back inside, and I felt it instantly. The room had shifted. Faces that hadn't even looked my way before were now sneaking glances, whispering, like they were trying to catch up on who I was. Margaret's expression looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. Ethan was visibly pale. "Natalie?" Oh, she was furious. She stormed toward me, her lips tight, bouquet clutched like a weapon. "What was that about?" she hissed, her fake smile frozen in place. I looked at her and stayed calm. "Someone saw what you never did." Her jaw clenched. "You couldn't let me have one day, could you?" I almost laughed. "One day? Natalie, you've had a lifetime." "I just came to sit quietly." She turned and stormed off, her heels pounding the floor, the petals in her bouquet trembling. The room resumed its rhythm, though something was undeniably different. The speeches began first, some cheesy toasts and awkward jokes from Ethan's cousins. I stayed quiet, nursing my ginger ale and waiting for it all to be over. Then Ethan's father stood up. "To family," he said with a forced smile, pausing to glance at me. "Even those who prefer boardrooms to ballrooms." A few people chuckled politely. But William didn't. He stood again, his chair scraping loudly, and said, "Let me add something to that." The room went quiet. He held up his glass, eyes scanning the crowd. "Inheriting wealth takes no skill. Marrying into it takes even less. But Emily Carter?" He turned his gaze to me, steady and proud. "She built something from nothing. She earned her place in rooms you'll never even be invited into. My toast tonight is to her." The room froze. Every mouth closed, every eye turned, no one laughed, no one clapped, just silence. Thick, stunned silence. I felt my heart beat in my ears. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just raised my glass slowly, nodded at William, and took a quiet sip. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't even validation, it was truth, spoken out loud for everyone who had tried so hard not to see me. William's toast wasn't just a compliment, it was a mirror held up to a room full of people who thought they already knew me. It didn't feel like a victory dance, it felt quiet, steady, sharp. I didn't smile or look around to see who was watching, I didn't need their approval anymore. Being praised feels good, sure, but being seen for who you are fully, clearly, That's something deeper. That's power. My family didn't know what to do with that. Natalie stood stiff in her designer heels, trying not to ruin her wedding photos with a scowl. My parents sat like mannequins, smiling in a way that looked more like confusion than pride. I could see my dad staring into space, probably scrambling to remember that one time I explained what I did for a living. My mom blinked too fast, like she was trying to replay a headline she never cared to finish reading. All my life they told me I was too much, too intense, too serious, too alone. And suddenly, because a man in a suit with a big name said I was worth listening to, they weren't sure where to put me, but I wasn't there for them. Not anymore. For years I used to dream about this moment. Mom bragging about me the way she used to brag about Natalie's handbags, or Dad calling me just to ask how a project was going instead of when I was going to settle down. But it never came, and over time I stopped chasing it. I built my life without them clapping in the background. I took risks, fell hard, got back up harder. I built my companies like I built myself, one stubborn choice at a time. This wedding, it was supposed to be Natalie's moment to shine, the final act of the perfect daughter who married into old money. I was supposed to sit quietly in the shadows, the odd one out, again. But I'm not anyone's shadow. I write my own story, and I stopped waiting for them to read it. Later, as the music played and the crowd shifted into late-night dancing, my mom came up to me. Her steps were slow, like walking across ice. She looked at me like she wasn't sure who she was talking to anymore. "You look beautiful, Emily," she said, voice soft like a worn-out apology. "Thanks," I said back, flat. No warmth, just truth. She hesitated, twisting the edge of her shawl. "We didn't know. About Zurich, about Mr. Bennett." I nodded once. "I know, we're proud of you," she added quickly, like she was trying to make up for a decade in one sentence. I looked her in the eyes. "Why now, Mom? Because some important man says I'm valuable, or because you finally believe it?" She didn't answer. She just reached for my hand, held it for a moment. Too long. I let her. Then I pulled away. I'd heard enough. As I made my way toward the exit, Natalie caught up. Her voice was tight. "I didn't know he knew you," she said. "Uncle William, I had no idea." I looked at her calmly. "You never asked," I replied. "You never asked about my life, my work, anything." She crossed her arms, defensive. "That's not fair." I nodded. "It's not. It's just true." She looked away, and for a second I saw something I hadn't seen in years, something real. "You always made me feel like I wasn't enough," she whispered. I tilted my head. "Funny. You and Mom always made me feel like I was too much." That was all there was to say. I walked out alone, just like I came in. But this time, no one laughed. No one whispered. I stood outside under the night sky, the stars faint behind the ballroom lights, the sound of music and glasses clinking behind the walls. But I didn't feel like the outsider anymore. I felt like the one who'd left the party before it got boring. A few guests walked past me, some nodding awkwardly. One man, a junior executive from a company I'd acquired years ago, looked at me, eyes wide. "I didn't know you were that Emily Carter," he said. I just stared. "You still don't." He shuffled away, mumbling an apology. William came out soon after, his hands in his pockets, tie loosened, the cool night breeze moving through his hair. He stood beside me, saying nothing at first. It didn't feel forced, it felt real. "I wasn't trying to steal the spotlight," he finally said. I shook my head. "I know. You were fixing their mistake." He smiled a little. Some lies deserve to break apart. Then he gave me the real gift. A partnership. Not a favor, not a charity project, a genuine opportunity. My name, my work, a new venture. He wanted me leading it, not because I impressed him tonight, but because I'd been doing the work all along. I didn't accept right away, not because I was playing hard to get, but because for the first time, I understood my value. "Let's talk Monday," I told him. He nodded. No drama, just quiet respect. I drove home with the windows down, cold air brushing my skin like a reminder that I was alive, really alive. I never had the kind of family who clapped when I succeeded or showed up when I needed them. But that night, I let go of needing them to. The win wasn't that the world finally saw me. It was that I finally stopped needing their applause to feel whole. That freedom, that peace, was mine now. And it was worth more than anything they ever could have given me.